Let me guess, you've been trying to learn a new language, but then at some point you thought, why is this taking so long? Or maybe I'm just not good enough at it. What if I told you that the problem isn't you? It's the lies that we've been told about language learning. No, you don't need to move abroad in order to become fluent. And no, you're not too old to learn a new language. And no, watching Netflix alone will not make you fluent. If it did, I'd probably speak every other language by now. In fact, there are so many myths about language learning that they may slow you down without you even realizing it. And today we're going to bust them all one by one. By the end of this video, you will see that fluency is way more achievable than you might think. And if you ever felt frustrated learning the language, I hope you'll feel better after this video. So let's start with the first and one of the most popular myths about language learning is that you have to be young to learn the language well. People always say, oh, kids learn languages so fast, and yes, they do, but you know what else they do? They take years to reach fluency. And also, their brain understands that learning a language is essential for them, like they will be able to express themselves, to express their needs and thoughts. It's important for their survival, so the brain thinks that it's kind of a priority. They have to do it actively. What we have as adults, on the other hand, we do not have this big need to learn the language in order to survive, to express our needs and so on, because we already know our native language that can deal with that. However, as adults, we have a very good advantage. We already know how to learn the language. We can understand grammar faster, we can use logic, we can use structured learning, and this is much better for us because this way we can learn languages much faster than kids do. We as adults understand how language works because we've mastered at least one by now. So if you're not a kid anymore, don't worry, your brain is still amazing at learning languages and other new things. Another very popular myth is that you need to live in the country where your target language is spoken, which is of course not true at all. Living in the country can help, but it doesn't guarantee you anything. A lot of people believe that moving abroad is the only way to master the language. While immersion is of course very powerful, simply living in the country where your target language is spoken doesn't guarantee you anything. Many expats live abroad for years and don't learn the language, because being surrounded by the language doesn't mean that you'll automatically absorb it. If you stay in your expat bubble and you'll use your native language all the time, it won't help you. On the other hand, we have internet and we can create this immersion from home. You can watch native content, join online communities, and talk to native speakers without ever traveling. Many language learners reach advanced levels in their languages without ever traveling. And me including, I've never lived in an English-speaking country, and yet I can call myself fluent in English by now. What you need is actively immerse yourself in this language, even if you're just at home, and we can do it in many different ways. So just surround yourself with the language, practice speaking daily, and be consistent. Fluency comes from consistency, not from your location. You don't need a plane ticket to learn a language. You need commitment, consistency, and smart learning. Another very common myth is that some people just don't have this language learning gene, which is completely false. There is no secret gene that makes you good at languages. It's a skill, it's not a talent. Have you ever met a baby who's bad at learning their native language? No, they just hear it all the time and eventually they start speaking it. The real difference between good and bad learners: practice and consistency. That's it. We live in the world where we see lots of advertisement that promise us fluency in 1, 3, 6 months, which is a very short period of time, and it's really hard to learn a language during this period of time. But you see these ads, you see some people claiming they learned the language in 3 months, and you start learning the language, you expect it to be easy at first, and in reality it's pretty hard. and challenging. And then you're like, wow, I cannot reach fluency in such a short period of time. Probably I'm not talented, which is completely false. You're not talented. You just need more time, more consistency and practice and more effort, and to stop comparing yourself to anyone else. Myth number 4 goes like, fluency means speaking like a native. No, no, and no. Fluency is about communication, not perfection. A lot of language learners think that if they don't speak perfect English and they don't have perfect accent, then maybe they are not fluent, which is not true. Here is the truth. Fluency is not about knowing every single slang word or every single word or having a perfect accent. It's about being able to express yourself naturally and being understood by other people. That's it. Now I'm pretty sure you could understand what I just said with that strong accent, and right now I am speaking with accent as well, and in both cases I am fluent because I can express my thoughts and I can speak about what I want to speak clearly, naturally, and you can understand me. That is fluency. Chasing a native accent can really hold you back because there are so many people who are obsessed with sounding like a native speaker, and it just can stop you from actually speaking because lots of people are shy, and we know that there are people who are commenting a lot on other people's accents, which is a very bad thing to do in my opinion because it just makes people feel shy, embarrassed and so on, and they just close up and stop speaking another language. So for myself, I define fluency this way. If you can understand native speakers and you can speak to them and express yourself freely and they can understand you, you can watch movies, read books in your target language, and you don't have to mentally translate everything in your head, you're fluent. It's all about being a confident and effective communicator and not about sounding 100% fluent. And from here we can move to our next myth is that you have to speak fast in order to be fluent. Speaking clearly is way more important than speaking fast. Even native speakers sometimes pause, rethink, rephrase what they want to say, and in fact, if you're not a native speaker, it is much better to speak slower and clearer than trying to speak really fast and make it hard for others to understand you. Again, fluency is about communication, not the speed. If you need to take it slow in order to express your thoughts, then just take it slow and don't rush anywhere. Myth number 6. You have to learn perfect grammar before speaking, which is completely wrong in my opinion, although I see controversial thoughts from some of the language teachers and people on the internet who say that it's a very bad advice to start speaking early on when you don't know the grammar or vocabulary yet. Obviously, you cannot speak like freely and express your thoughts if you don't have enough grammar and vocabulary. But if you wait until you learn enough grammar and enough vocabulary, it will take you so long and it will be much harder for you to start speaking later. If you start speaking early on, with what you already know and what you already have, it will be much better and it will make the process much easier for you. Imagine if babies waited before they know perfect grammar. We would be silent for years in that case. So you don't need a perfect grammar before you start speaking. Just use what you already know, what you already have, and learn as you go. The more speaking practice you have, the easier it gets and the more natural the grammar feels. And from here we can move to our myth number 7, which sounds like you need to know thousands of words before you can start speaking, which is also, of course, not true. In fact, you need about 500 to 1000 words to have real conversations. And the secret is to start using those words immediately as you learn them. Try to say simple sentences, very simple conversations and dialects, because if you wait until you know enough to start, you'll just never start, because you'll never know enough. Trust me, it's language learning. You always will think that I don't know how to say this, I don't know how to say that, I don't understand this, and so on. Just start early on. Myth number 8. You should only learn a new language in that language and never use your native language. This idea comes from the immersion method, when you surround yourself with the language as much as possible. And while immersion is really great, the idea of never using your native language is a little bit misleading. Your native language is a tool and you should use it wisely. It is especially important when you are starting to learn a new language from zero. Imagine trying to figure out a complex grammar rule without any translations, explanations, and comparisons. It would take you much longer than if you just used your native language and read the explanation. It is completely fine to use your native language for grammar explanations, understanding some concepts, looking up some tricky words. It will take you much faster this way than if you were to try to figure out everything in your target language. Especially at the beginning, trying to learn everything through your target language can feel really overwhelming because it's really slow and it's not worth it in my opinion. Use your native language as a tool and speed up the process of learning your target language this way. Myth number 9. Once you are fluent, you will never forget the language. I wish this one was true, but it's also not. It's a myth. Lots of people think that once you learn a new language, it's just locked in your brain forever, like bike riding, but unfortunately, languages aren't like bikes, they are more like muscles. If you don't use them, they will weaken over time. Your brain always prioritizes what you use the most, and if you stop speaking a language for months or even years, your brain will just deprioritize it. And you will slowly start to forget some vocabulary, struggling with grammar, and find it hard to have a conversation in this language. But the good news, even if you stop using it, it doesn't disappear completely. It's much easier for you to kind of reactivate that language again with some practice. So if you come back to learning, it will get back to you much faster. And in order to not forget your language, like it doesn't mean you have to speak your target language all the time in order to keep it in your head. A little bit of passive immersion and like even 10 minutes a day is good to keep the language alive in your head. Listen to something, to some music, to a podcast, watch a movie sometimes in your target language, and this passive exposure will work and keep the language alive in your head. And we're moving to our last myth, number 10, which sounds as the more resources you have, the easier it is for you to learn the language. You know, sometimes less is more. It may sound logical, like if you have lots of courses, textbooks, apps, YouTube videos, you should learn the language faster, right? But in reality, having too many resources can sometimes lead to overwhelm, inconsistency, or lack of progress, because more resources equals more distractions. Many learners just jump between apps, books, YouTube videos, courses instead of sticking to one method. Sticking to one or two solid resources is way more effective than having 10 different resources and jumping between them all the time. The best language learners are not the ones that have the most apps or the most resources. In fact, the best language learners are the ones that are consistent and practice every day. This was the last myth for today. Now I want to hear from you. Have you heard any other language learning myths? Or maybe you have some thoughts about what I just talked about? Just let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And in case you want to know some secrets, polyglot secrets to learn the languages, I recommend you to check out this video. I have 10 polyglot secrets on how to learn languages. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye. Happy learning.